Hey guys, it's 2.0 here, and today we are reacting to film theory. So if you don't know this show is actually about talking about theories of everything. Okay, so let's just hop on into it.
You are never gonna believe this. I know Godzilla vs. Okay, guys, you are never gonna believe this. I know Godzilla vs. Kong is coming out in a few weeks, but I managed to get myself an early copy of the movie. Or should I say I managed to find a weak bootleg copy that someone was willing to sell me on the internet. Huh, alright, looks a little beat up. I thought the title was different. Maybe that was just an early draft. Anyway, let's check this thing out. Yeah, just odd choice. Feels a bit lo-fi, but maybe they were looking for something different?
Okay, drop it.
Why is it like this? Bro, why is Kong look so different?
Oh, this is the original Godzilla vs. King Kong.
Oh.
Yep, okay.
This is funny.
Gotta say, I don't hate it.
Me too.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's more fun than a barrel full of giant prehistoric ape-like cryptids. You know, it's been a tough couple of years for Legendary Pictures' big-budget MonsterVerse franchise. After audiences got so annoyed at Godzilla not showing up for more than a few minutes of his own movie back in 2014, they paid him back by not showing up at all for his significantly more exciting sequel, King of the Monsters, in 2019. Boom!
Yeah.
Get dunked on, Godzilla. The only thing that's reliably able to take you down is poor box office earnings. Fortunately for Godzilla and Company, though, the studio was already well into production on the next movie at that point. But then World Events shut down theaters, and now only by the grace of our corporate masters at AT&T and Warner Brothers can we finally see Godzilla vs. Kong the way any iconic summer blockbuster battle between two 400-foot monsters was meant to be watched 2.5 inches high on our phones.
Yeah.
This is a movie that's already raising a bunch of questions. Why are they fighting? When did Kong get so much bigger? Why didn't this happen years ago alongside Civil War and Batman v Superman?
Yeah.
Side note, is this whole thing gonna get resolved by both of them knowing someone named Mothra? Mothra! Why did you say that name? But we all know what the big question is in these sorts of movies. Who is gonna win? Well, if you know the channel, you know that we're gonna do our darndest to answer this one early. And if you don't know the channel, consider subscribing for mind-blowing theories each and every week that'll make you look smart in front of all your friends. Now then, let's start answering our question by having a look at both of our competitors. According to the MonsterVerse canon, this incarnation of Godzilla is 393 feet tall, or about 120 meters, not counting the additional 189 feet, or 57.6 meters of his tail. And he weighs in at approximately 99,634 tons, making him unquestionably the largest version of Godzilla ever depicted in live action. By contrast, Kong was only 104 feet tall, or 35 meters, when we last saw him in Kong Skull Island, which is pretty big, but only a fourth of Godzilla's size. However, it seems like he's gotten himself a lot bigger, considering that in the new movie's trailer, they stand next to each other on some aircraft carriers, and Kong is at Godzilla's eye level, if not even taller. Man, looking at this scene just makes me think the real winner of this battle is any boat able to float while 200,000-ton creatures duke it out on the deck. Now, knowing these rough statistics, we can use science to see which creature is going to pack a bigger punch. Analyze what Godzilla's heat ray weapon does and doesn't destroy so we can see the temperature estimate. Look at overall differences between the mammalian brain and the reptile brain to see whose strategy is going to win. Except there's one major problem with all of that. If I'm using science, well, science says that both these creatures would lose because they can't possibly exist in the first place. You know those fun-ruining laws of science that get in the way of, say, explosions in space, or sound in space, or literally everything to do with space? Giant monster movies tend to smack head first into all those fun-ruining laws of science, mainly physics problems like the square cube law. That's the mathematical principle discovered by Galileo in 1638 that says that mass increases at a faster rate than size. Basically, as area squares, mass cubes. And this becomes a problem when you consider that the strength of a muscle or bone is roughly the function of its area, but weight is a function of volume. So let's say you double a monkey's height while keeping it the same shape. You wind up with 4 times the muscle power, moving 8 times the mass. That, as you might imagine, just isn't gonna work. An organism can only scale up up a certain amount before all the other forces of physics and thermodynamics cause it to collapse in on itself. Neither Kong nor Godzilla would be able to grow to their respective sizes. If they existed at that size, gravity would break their bones. If their bones were somehow strong enough, gravity would pull the flesh and organs off those bones. If their entire bodies were strong enough, they'd collapse into the Earth itself.
What?
And even if you negated those issues, it is
Well, yeah.
mathematically inconceivable that Kong would consume enough nutrients and water to sustain himself each and every day. So while I'd love to science my way into an answer...
Okay. Godzilla's mind should be like, bruh. It's like he's like talking to Kong in his mind, thinking like, oh my god, bro, are you okay? We're filming this video, you know. You can't just die so soon.
For this one, the suspension of disbelief here is so extreme that you'd need like a wizard or a fairy or some level of literal magic to even approach working this out. Fortunately for us, that's exactly what we have. See, the Japanese kaiju genre, and this monsterverse in particular, has really leaned into the mishmash of atomic age sci-fi, gothic mad science, and straight up folklore to justify the hand-wavium it takes to get onto the stompy. Sure, most of the friends and foes of Godzilla, Gamera, and the rest are supposed to be dinosaurs, mutations, or aliens from outer space, but more than a few are also identified as legendary supernatural
Ghidorah, we all know Ghidorah is an alien.
creatures, demons, spirits, even literal gods.
All the legends, the stories.
Oh, come on. At this time,
They're true. They really were the first gods.
In fact, Godzilla gets his name in the original 1954 movie from local legend about a sea monster. So even in his earliest appearance, he's equal parts regional folklore and atomic monster. And that mix has persisted throughout all of his incarnations. The 1990s Japanese reboot series retconned Godzilla's origin to be a normal dinosaur who protected Japanese soldiers stationed on an island in World War II. But he's also a karmic force punishing the men he saved for spending their lives in pursuit of capitalist greed.
Sir, you must leave your office. Get in your way.
Yes, I know that. I nearly died on Lagos Island, along with my entire garrison. But the dinosaur saved us all, and all of that prosperity I built is now being destroyed by the same dinosaur at this moment. And there's nothing I can do about it. It's very ironic, don't you think?
well, it's like he has like, his teeth is like so weird.
Wow, that is deep for a movie with a guy in a rubber dinosaur suit. Then, a decade later, the movie Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attacks, definitely a mouthful, featured an even scarier magical Godzilla who was made of dead people. No, really, in that version, Godzilla's inhabited by the angry souls of everyone who was killed in the Pacific during World War II, and he's come to stomp Japan into rubble as punishment for them joining the war in the first place. Each and every time in these movies, sure, there is science involved. Godzilla is the atomic monster after all. But more so, the stories are resolved via folklore. King Kong is largely the same way. In the original 1933 film, he's a god who demands sacrifices from Skull Island's indigenous people. And again, in the original King Kong vs. Godzilla from 1962,
The unconquerable King Kong, giant gorilla god of this South Seas paradise.
Wait, did
Wait,
he just say uncomfortable?
Unconquerable King Kong.
Do you mean incomparable? Uncomfortable just makes it seem like King Kong has a mild case of jock itch.
Yeah.
And like time and again, we see these creatures being just as much religion and folklore as they are science and technology. And you can't have folklore without the lore bit. And yes, the Monsterverse makes sure to check that box too.
Kong's god on the island. But the devils live below us.
And what are they called?
Skull crawlers.
Why?
Because it sounds neat.
And this is where we're going to be able to find our answer. In battles between gods, it's not a question of science, it's a question of religion. And it's here that things really start to get weird. Alright, maybe not that weird.
Yeah.
You see, Godzilla King of Monsters reveals that the Monster vs. Godzilla origin is tied very strongly to what's called a singular proto-civilization theory. Basically the idea that prior to all of known history, there was an advanced human civilization civilization with a shared language and culture that fell somehow, and whose scattered population subsequently founded all the different human societies that come later. These are your classic legends like Atlantis and the Tower of Babel, and the theory is meant to explain how societies that never met somehow have weird similarities, like why all the old-timey cultures were so into building pyramids, why the same monsters exist in the mythology of all corners of the earth, and why every culture somehow inexplicably loves Minecraft.
Yeah.
Looks Egyptian or Roman. No, this is something different. This is way older.
Now, no legitimate historian really takes this theory seriously, but it's treated as real in this latest incarnation of the Monsterverse. And one of the hallmarks of this theory is that many ancient religions have a common theme of the new gods sweeping in to overthrow the old and ugly false gods that came before, like Zeus and the Olympians defeating the Titans, or the Viking gods against the frost giants. In fact, even some ancient versions of the Book of Genesis describe Noah's flood as happening to destroy half-human, half-angel giants called Nephilim, who tried to usurp the Hebrew god. These proto-civilization ideas also tend to come bundled with hollow earth theories, in which the old gods or losing civilization is then forced to retreat underground. Now, in the movies, the character Dr. Searzawa has a film theory of his own based on all of this. It's not just a cute nickname. Godzilla and all his big buddies are literally the Titans, as in the original true gods.
When I think about the word Godzilla, it's like he's like a god, but enormous.
Of this fallen proto-civilization. And since he is a very serious scientist with a very, very silly theory in a Godzilla movie, he turns out to be exactly right.
These are not monsters. They are animals rising to reclaim a world that was once theirs.
But wait, if Godzilla is a titan, and titans are the old gods who generally lose and get driven underground in all the creation myths, and Kong is also a god by his people, and he lives on the...
But wait, if Kong is on the surface, then okay, this makes no sense.
surface, and his main, possibly only job on Skull Island was beating up lizards that come up from the underground, then Godzilla vs. Kong isn't just a title fight, it's a rematch. And the movie seems to back this up. The first post-credit scene in King of the Monsters implies that this fight has happened before, and the trailer for the new movie features a lot of talk about a war in the past tense.
The myths are real. There was a war.
Given everything that we just talked about,
Was a king tour guide, cave paintings of titans resembling Kong and Godzilla discovered.
we know who won the battle the first time. Kong. He's the one on the surface. He's the one retrieving his former battle axe. In short, he has beat...
I think that Kong's axe is like the Godzilla's fin. I mean the dorsal fins. Because if you see closely on Kong's axe, it's the axe. It's like Godzilla's dorsal fins. Okay.
Beaten Godzilla before. So Godzilla is coming into this thing with a loss already on the board. Does that thereby mean that Kong is the favorite to win? Well, yeah, actually. It fits with the mythology, and it fits narratively given the fact that Godzilla just had a massive victory in King of the Monsters. He is due for a loss. But I think our biggest proof for what's actually going to happen in this movie comes from the original King Kong vs. Godzilla from back in 1962. You see, friends, it's easy to overlook amidst all the urban destruction, but these sorts of crossover movies are like the hype house of cinema. You get a bunch of loud monsters together for a collab so that they can all get more
Hey, is that the guy from earlier at Jurassic World?
popular. And this was true in that first movie. Back in 1962, Kong was the much more well-known and popular monster. Godzilla had only appeared in 2 movies before that, and number 2 hadn't been nearly as well received as the first. In fact, King Kong vs. Godzilla only happened because a super shady Hollywood producer borrowed an incomplete production concept called King Kong vs. Frankenstein, and then ran off to Japan to produce a different unapproved version using Godzilla instead of Frank. By the time the studios back in the US who actually owned Kong caught wind of this and took him back, King Kong vs. Godzilla was already a gigantic worldwide hit, and Godzilla had become a household name, with the company Toho cranking out Godzilla sequels and has never really stopped since. But in the movie, neither one actually loses. Godzilla kinda loses because...
Sorry guys, I have to do something.
Actually loses. Godzilla kinda loses because he disappears and Kong is the one seen swimming off into the sun.
Okay. We don't see Kong swimming off, but that doesn't mean that Godzilla loses. Godzilla lives in the water. Don't you guys remember?
But neither one is officially a loser here. And you see, friends, that is where this whole thing starts coming together. You see, the real win for the studio here isn't about who wins, it's that neither monster loses.
What? Oh, come on.
These are crazy.
We're feeling good.
Losing implies that one fan base is right and one fan base is wrong. One set of merch is cooler than the other. One franchise continues on successfully while the other kinda dies because it lost in the last one. And the way you avoid that situation is to split the difference. You introduce a third-party villain so the warring factions can team up, or
Okay, guys, sorry, I have to do another thing again.
split the difference. You introduce a third-party villain so the warring factions can team up, or just render the verdict muddy enough that no one knows who actually won or lost. I mean, I was joking about it before, but Batman v Superman couldn't wait to tell you that Doomsday was the real big bad in that movie. And Superman doesn't die by Batman's hand, he does it to himself in a heroic sacrifice for mankind. Civil War has the twist that Zemo was manipulating them all the whole time, causing everyone to forget that the Civil War between Captain America and Iron Man didn't really have a clear-cut winner. Even Twilight denied its fans a decisive Team Edward versus Team Jacob showdown in favor of them teaming up against a new challenger, the evil Vampire Legion, which ended up being all a dream anyway. Best twist ending ever, I guess. And of course, the real villain of The Ring versus The Grudge turned out to be whoever decided we needed The Ring versus The Grudge. But seriously, neither one wins out in that case either. They also join forces. This also would coincide with the lore for the movies. It's easy to overlook, but technically both monsters are heroes.
Actually, with both of these, I think if... Okay, so like... I think if like... Wait. I think if like... Godzilla is formed with the T-Rex, then that might be a cool thing. Because like, a T-Rex with Godzilla, it can have like a roaring atomic breath beam. Okay, I know this has no sense.
Technically, both monsters are heroes. Kong protects our heroes on Skull Island. Godzilla protects the world from all the awakened titans. They are both good guys here. Heck, there's even this line about Godzilla in King of the Monsters.
He fought for us, died for us. He's not only proof that coexistence is possible, he is the
I've seen this movie before, actually.
key to it.
So one losing here just doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, here's my real prediction. In the trailer for Godzilla vs. Kong, we hear this line.
Godzilla's out there and he's hurting people and we don't know why.
Which implies that he's been behaving himself since last time, and now something weird is happening. Well, in traditional Godzilla movie lore, if Godzilla ain't acting like himself, it's because he's not himself. That's right, we have ourselves a new challenger in the ring, and his name is Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla is a giant...
Yeah, it's been a long time for Mechagodzilla to appear.
Robot duplicate of Godzilla that's appeared in multiple forms across multiple different eras of the franchise. Almost always as either a remote-controlled or piloted fighting robot, and always as one of the real Godzilla's deadliest opponents. And while he's usually pretty hard to miss, being all hundreds of feet tall and shiny, in his first appearance in 1974's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, he spends the first half of the film wearing fake skin to disguise himself as the real thing. So could it be that in some, or even all of the scenes that we've seen in the trailer thus far, we're getting misdirected and Kong is actually fighting a giant robot wearing a Godzilla suit? Well, a lot of eagle-eyed monster fans have noticed some tiny spots in the trailer. Notice the Godzilla-shaped creature on the computer monitor, but definitely a robot back there. And this head in the building rubble, where they think they can see Godzilla's mechanical doppelganger hiding in plain sight. And while we haven't seen Giant Mecha in the Monsterverse yet, we have seen both Monarch and Alan Jonah, the eco-terrorist baddie throughout the Monsterverse, collecting Titan body parts as plot points. Monarch's secret base had a Muto skull built into its centerpiece, and a post-credit scene in King of the Monsters featured Jonah collecting King Ghidorah's severed head.
Yeah, I saw this Easter clip in, well, while I was watching using Astro Ultra Ball.
Head. Why would that matter? Well, recently unembargoed set reports have described that head as being a prop in the new film, but now, quote, fused with technology. And historically, both Mechaghidorah and Mechagodzilla have been depicted as human-piloted cyborgs built out of the bodies of deceased kaiju. This would allow us to see Kong battle a Godzilla, team up with the real Godzilla, and leave both of these monster heroes as winners to continue their franchises as victors. Now that is what I would call a twist. So there you have it, folks. Kong and Godzilla will meet and
Wait, what? Okay.
both of these monster heroes as winners to continue their franchises as victors. Now that is what I would call
Look at this. He's not even looking at the robot though.
a twist. So there you have it, folks. Kong and Godzilla will meet, and you will see the monkey take down the lizard, but not exactly in the way you thought. And maybe, if we're right, that means you'll also see Mecha Kong too? Alright, maybe not. That one's just silly. But hey,
Yeah.
that's just a
The
theory.
theory.
A
A
film
film
theory. And remember to
remember-
atomic breath that subscribe button, my friends. Like I said before, this is the channel that gives you a lot of cool stuff to talk about when it comes to movies, TV, and YouTube with all your friends. So be the first on your block to come up with these theories, find new shows or
Where do you
movies
watch
that
this one?
天黑请闭眼，狼人请睁眼，
Oh my
狼人请杀人。
Not this one.
You-
Look at the most funniest one. The most thing. It's the one that could be. Oh my guys, don't eat it. What? Like that.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the kaiju monster of smart internet shows. Wait, does that even make sense?
Yeah.
For the oversized internet show about... I don't know, I guess it sounded good in my head, but now just saying it out loud, I just sound stupid. And also, now that I think of it, redundant, since kaiju implies the monster half, so, I don't know, now I'm all screwed up. Anyway, when it comes to oversized kaiju monsters, double redundancy there. No one beats... Give it up!
My
Here we
God!
are. You can't beat a rocket-powered... monsters, double redundancy there. No one beats... Give it up!
Like I think I should like always use this as
I don't care who you are. You can't beat a rocket-powered flying turtle monster. But the most famous of the kaiju are the two big old classics themselves, Godzilla and King
King
Kong.
Kong.
Over the years, these two enormous monsters have had dozens of movies made about them. I'm sure
I think
most of you are already familiar with Godzilla's backstory. He's a prehistoric sea monster awakened by nuclear radiation. But King Kong's backstory, well, that's a bit more mysterious. Or at least it was, until today. Because I did the research, and by looking closely at the new movie Kong Skull Island, past King Kong lore, and good old-fashioned science, we can start to piece together the big ape's origin. And not only that, but also some of the hidden secrets that I predict you'll be seeing revealed over the next few movies in this kaiju monster universe that's been kicked off by Godzilla and Skull Island. Ready to go? Cue
do
that
that
ominous
ominous
stinger.
stinger.
Previously, the only thing we knew for certain about Kong was his home, Skull Island. In the original 1930s classic, this island was geographically located 12 degrees south and 78 degrees east on the map. The closest real-life island to these coordinates is the Cocos Island, otherwise known as the Keeling Island. And if you compare the Keeling Island to Skull Island, they're pretty much an exact match. A coral atoll teeming with overgrown vegetables and a tropical monsoon climate. I mean, the only real difference between the two is that one's renowned for its beautiful beaches and the other has prehistoric dragon creatures and a giant ape. So, pretty much the exact same.
Getting greetings from the
And that was all we had for decades. Now, fast forward to 2004 and the release of Peter Jackson's King Kong Remake. In a tie-in novel released alongside the movie, it's revealed that Kong and the other giant prehistoric creatures on Skull Island survived due to its isolated location. But is that even possible? Could some large monsters from prehistoric times have survived thousands of years past that ancient extinction asteroid that killed off the dinosaurs and be hiding out in some remote island today? Well, yes. And no. You see, there are quite a few Jurassic Age species that survived the KT extinction event, or the Cretaceous Tertiary extinction event. That's the fancy scientific name for the events that killed off the dinosaurs. And when I say quite a few, I mean a bunch. I mean, we all think of that asteroid hitting the Earth as an event that killed off everything, but in reality, almost 84% of marine life made it. Crocodiles, certain types of fish, frogs, even a few small land mammals. Don't believe the lies your third grade science teacher is peddling. But there is a key word here, and that word is small. After the asteroid's impact with Earth, the theory goes that the atmosphere changed drastically. So some smaller species survived, but larger species, boom, completely wiped out. Thus, dinosaurs equals extinct. But there is one way dinosaurs actually could have survived, and that's underground. In 2007, scientists discovered an underground den of dinosaur bones, suggesting that some dinosaurs survived that initial KT extinction by avoiding the extreme.
Okay, this is my theory. Maybe they didn't went inside because like the brains are super small. Only Velociraptors.
Changes in the environment in the only place that was safe inside the Earth. And we see that the new movie Kong Skull Island actually backs that theory up. Houston Brooks, one of the Monarch scientists on the hunt for the kaiju, name drops the hollow Earth theory. This theory claims that within the Earth there are hollow interior spaces that have their own magnetic poles and atmospheres. Per Brooks, the dinosaurs must have gone into these hollow spaces, surviving well past the KT event to the 1970s when the movie begins, which, scientifically speaking, in the real world is incredibly far-fetched, but in the Kongverse is entirely possible and looks to be true. Thus, we have the origins of the underground skull crawlers. And in a brilliant design detail on the part of the movie's designers, you can tell that the skull crawlers adapted to a life spent burrowed within the earth. They have sunken eyes and skeletal features. It's awesome to see that level of detail, but none of this explains Kong. He's still as hairy and muscular as ever, showing no signs of his species having to adapt to living in caves for millions of years. There's something else going on here. So if Kong wasn't Netflix and chilling since prehistoric times, then where did he come from? To figure this out, we need to trace Kong's family history. The closest ancient ancestors to Kong are the Gigantopithecus blacki, a species of ape that existed from 9 million to 100,000 years ago. These apes originating from South China and Vietnam were the biggest apes that ever walked the earth, standing at a whopping 10 feet tall. But obviously, even at 10 feet tall, Kong dwarfs these giant apes. According to Kong Skull Island's director, quote, "This is going to be the biggest Kong there's ever been. Not 10 foot or 30 foot, but 100-foot ape," end quote. So that places him nearly 10
Can it be like 1,000 foot? That would be funny.
times the height of the Gigantopithecus. And while I admit that may seem initially like a theory killer, a recent study published in the 2015 Journal of Science tracked the relationship between the sizes of large animals and time. According to their study, it took 542 million years for marine animals to increase in size by 150-fold. Comparing this statistical growth to the Gigantopithecus blacki's 9 million year history, the average size could theoretically increase by 150 divided by 542 million equals x over 9 million, cross multiply, divide to separate out the x, and approximately 2.5 times. Yeah. So at most it'd be like 20 feet, not the 100-foot mammoth monkey that we end up seeing, so... yeah, that one ended up being a theory killer. But hey, you know what? That's okay, because there'd still be one fatal flaw. In Kong Skull Island, the downed World War II pilot Hank Marlowe reveals that the local tribes on the island had to survive thousands of years against the skull crawlers without any help from Kong. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, the Kongs appeared and fought back against the skull crawlers, protecting the tribe members. But that's a weird detail, right? Giant apes don't just pop into existence.
Come on, Chinese ant.
They gotta come from somewhere. It's almost like Kong was placed on the island rather than grew up there. And that's exactly what happened. If you pay close attention to the new movie, there's a blink and you'll miss it cameo by a familiar name that gives this whole conspiracy away. When Marlowe reveals the island's history to the group of survivors, they're in a temple the natives built to worship Kong. And where's that temple located? Inside of a ship. But why would the natives ever build their temple in the decrepit bowels of a ship instead of, say, a cave or something? Well, as the characters enter into the ship temple for a few seconds, we see the ship's name, the Wanderer. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Wanderer is the name of the ship from the 1930s film, the ship that transported King Kong from Skull Island to New York. But in this new reboot, the Wanderer isn't rusting on the docks of New York, but instead it's rusting away on Skull Island. This new reboot has deliberately inverted the boat's whereabouts, suggesting that Kong wasn't brought from Skull Island to New York as it's always been, but instead was brought from New York to Skull Island. The locals have created an altar for Kong in the ship that delivered their savior to them. Now, before you call me bananas, remember that the most important thing about this new version of King Kong, and the thing that separates it out from all previous versions, is that it's a part of a shared universe with Godzilla, because everyone wants to be Marvel these days. And in the 2014 Godzilla movie, we actually learn the US government already knows about the existence of kaiju as early as 1850. In fact, the kaiju are such a threat that the US government forms Monarch, a secret organization to hunt and study these giant monsters. Monarch even lures Godzilla to an island where they detonate a nuke to kill him. Of course, this nuke has the opposite effect. Godzilla actually gets stronger with each dose of radiation. So, facing monsters that take their greatest weapon of the atom bomb and treat it like a shot of power thirst, what could Monarch possibly do other than create their own monster? And that's not just me spitballing, just look at the company name itself. In the real world, Monarch is a real company, a company that, according to their website, collects information on genes and mutations for biomedical research. And if you think it's just a coincidence that the fictional Monarch government agency and this real scientific institution just so happen to share the same name, look no further than their logos. They're almost exactly alike. Two sideways infinity symbols. What I'm saying is that in the movies, King Kong isn't just some random prehistoric ape. The science and timelines just don't add up. But you know what does? Gene mutations done by Monarch. I mean, scientists are already using gene mutation to increase the size of animals. Researchers at the Salk Institute created genetically stronger and larger mice by suppressing specific genes. And genetically modified salmon are programmed to grow year-round instead of just during spring and summer. After just 18 months, these salmon were almost double the length and 3 times the weight of a normal salmon. So it's not that far of a stretch to say that a fictional government organization named after a real organization that specializes in gene science would use this exact same tech to craft genetically larger apes. As we learn in Skull Island, per Marlowe, King Kong's only just a kid, which doesn't actually make sense on paper. Given that the lifespan of a typical ape is 40 years and Marlowe's been stuck on the island for 26, Kong should be pushing middle age, and yet King Kong is...
Wait, so if 20 plus 40 is 60, and then 6 plus 0 is 66, then Kong is on the island for like 66 years now. And still
only a kid? Why? Well, because of genetic modification. During puberty in animals, there's an increased production of the hormone estrogen. The high concentration of estrogen in the blood causes growth plates in the bones to fuse, thus closing down growth centers of bones and preventing my pimply 16-year-old self from getting taller. However, if you manipulated Teen Pat's genes to reduce the production of estrogen during puberty, then the size of my nerdy Dockers-wearing self would increase without limit. I would finally become the tall, masculine god that I had always envisioned myself to be. The same applies to Kong. If Monarch had altered the ape's genetic makeup to keep him growing, what they essentially did was delay his puberty, keeping him, as Marlowe says, only a kid. So then what is the true lineage of King Kong? Well, let me break it down for you. In the 1850s, scientists discovered the existence of kaiju life living within the Earth's surface. They try everything to defeat these monsters. Bombs, nukes, radiation, poisoning, but nothing works. Faced with an unprecedented threat, they decide to fight fire with fire, creating their own genetically modified creatures, super large apes.
Oh my god.
After creating these apes, they ship them off to an isolated island. What is that? Per their research, fight fire with fire, creating their own genetically modified creatures, for their apes to grow After creating these apes, they ship them off to an isolated
Monkey
island.
should
An island, per their research, that may be a hot spot for kaiju life. They wait for over 60 years for their apes to grow and evolve on that island. But in the 1970s, as their money and influence dwindles, Monarch has no choice but to prove to the government that their research wasn't for naught. They send 2 scientists armed with a couple of bombs and a camera on a trip to Skull Island to document the fruits of their labor. Once over the island, these scientists drop bombs, awakening the kaijus dwelling beneath the Earth's surface, all to see if their monster, King Kong, has what it takes to defeat them. The whole trip to Skull Island in the new Kong movie is nothing more than a test run to see if Monarch's masterpiece, King Kong, has what it takes to defeat humanity's greatest threat, Godzilla. It's just gonna take until 2020 and the whole connected kaiju universe to see these 2 skyscraper-sized monsters finally cross paths. But hey, that's just a theory. A film!
Wait, what?
Kaiju universe to see these 2 skyscraper-sized monsters finally cross paths. But hey, that's just a theory.
Siri, find the nearest banana store. That's funny.
A film theory and cut. Remember a few weeks ago when I did that episode on The Walking Dead? Talked about how the series is all touchy-feely, got to interview Robert Kirkman, the creator of the series, to talk to him about theories, both the good, like secret clues hidden in Tyrese's death, and the bad, like the coma theories. You heard it here!
That'd be the worst.
With the coma. Well, he and his team enjoyed the interview and the episode so much that they put me as a character in their video game, Walking Dead Road to Survival. How cool is that? Apparently I'm a
What?
savior and armed to the max. So if you've ever wanted to team up with me or feed me to a horde of hungry zombies eager to tear out my throat with their teeth, then download Walking Dead Road to Survival, and when you find me, take a screenshot and send it on in. I would love to see you guys mutilate my twitching undead corpse. And hey, a very, very special thank you to The Walking Dead and their gaming team Scopely for partnering with me to make that happen. Get slaughtering, my friends. I'll leave a link in the description. I am so excited about this opportunity, and I am so excited to share it with you guys. So go out there, find me, and enjoy the game. It's free to download, so really there's no excuse outside of I don't have a phone, in which case that is a perfectly valid excuse. But otherwise, find me and kill me. Now if you'll excuse me, I gotta prep for next week, and I believe the seas are calling my name.
Oh, guys, if you like this game and video, let's just subscribe. See you guys next time.